Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My topic today is zoo from Lorises Point of View. And so I would like to use Loris as an example to show you how the well-being of a zoo animal can be measured quantitatively, and so that we can identify these environmental and individual factors that affect their well-being and improve the lives of these small primates whose welfare is often overlooked. So, have you ever been to a zoo? If you have you ever wondered why do we have zoos? And also, what is the role of a modern zoo? So actually, a modern zoo has three aims. So first is to promote conservation and also public education and research. So the conservation work zoo can do include a captive breeding program to maintain the genetic variation of endangered animals, and also a reintroduction program where animals are trained so that someday they may be able to be released back into the wild. And modern zoo also aims to promote public education by providing visitors a chance to observe this species-specific behavior of animals. And research in zoo often focuses on the well-being or the welfare of zoo animals. How can we measure the well-being of an animal? How do we know what an animal really needs and how it feels about its environment? So there are many factors in this environment that might affect its well-being. For example, here we have this guy, and the animal he lives with, they may be very bad to him, or his nest may be too close to the visitors, which makes him very nervous. And also, maybe his home is just too small. But how do we know? How do we know if any of these factors actually affect his well-being? And the most important is, how do we do this quantitatively? And what are we going to do with this once we have the data? So one way we can do that is by measuring cortisol levels. So when we face stressors, our adrenal glands will secrete a hormone called cortisol. So it's often used as an indicator of stress. So the short-term increase of cortisol is adaptive. It can help us to deal with the stressors. But long-term exposure to cortisol can have many negative effects, include the impaired immune system and also reduced reproductivity. Okay, there are many ways that the cortisol can be measured. For example, in blood and saliva, and urine, feces, and also hair. So next, I'm going to introduce my target animal, which is slow loris. Okay, so what is slow loris? Slow loris is an endangered primate living in the rainforest of Southeast Asia. And they are arboreal, which means that they live in the trees, and they're nocturnal, which means that they sleep during the day and they become active during the night. And they are solitary, which means that they live alone or they live in small nuclear family. So why slow loris? So unlike many other large animals and also great apes, slow loris is often not a target of welfare research. And the exhibition of slow loris remained very old-fashioned and is not designed for lorises. And the lorises in the zoo often live in very poor health conditions and often die of unknown causes, despite they are endangered animals. So my goal is so there are environmental and individual factors that will affect the stress level of lorises and which can be reflected by the cortisol level. So what I want to do is to identify these factors, and then next I want to do is to propose loris-specific zoo design to the zookeepers, which we can also call an enrichment program. So from 6 Japanese zoos, I collect feces and also hair samples, and then I did the enzyme immunoassays to compare their cortisol levels. And okay, first let's look at the environmental factors. So actually, I found that lorises from different zoos actually differ a lot in their cortisol levels. And this may be because that each zoo is so different in many aspects, such as enclosure design and also social composition of the lorises, and cleaning rates of keepers, or substrate, which means what the floor is made of, and also the length of artificial night. We know that the nocturnal animals in the zoo are subjected to this artificial night, so that to keep them awake during the day, so that visitors can see them. And among these factors, this one and this one can really have a huge impact on the stress levels. Actually, what I found, one environmental factors I found is the species of neighbor. So some lorises are arranged in this way so that all of them will have a neighbor of the same species. But some lorises are arranged in this way so that they have a neighbor of different species in between. And what I found is that lorises with the neighbor of different species in between actually have lower cortisol levels. And why is that? So as I mentioned before, the lorises are the solitary animals. So when one male loris meets another male loris in the territory, in the wild, they may get into a fight. But in captivity, these lorises will have to endure each other's presence in a very close distance, and that may be a source of stress. Next, let's look at the individual factors. The sources of individual differences in stress levels include like age and sex, and maybe aggression received from other lorises, and also origin and history, like whether it is born in the wild or born in captivity, or whether it is raised by the human or by the mother. And also previous experience with the keepers, or perhaps the sensitivity of stress response. And what I found is that a link between personality and stress levels in lorises. So what I found is that the friendly animals, which means the animals that would approach me during my sample collection and also behavior observation, actually have much lower cortisol levels. So we know that environmental and individual factors affect the stress level of lorises and can be reflected by cortisol levels. And now that we have identified these factors, what we're going to do next is to propose a loris-specific zoo design to zookeepers. And we can even further to assess whether this program works or not by measuring this cortisol level again after this program. And actually, there is an ongoing enrichment program for loris based on my research results in the backyard of Japan Monkey Center. And in the future, we can even try this kind of mixed species exhibition to include like sun bear or sugar glider in the same enclosure, because we know that lorises with the neighbor of different species will have lower cortisol levels. And by doing this can not only maybe reduce the loris stress level, but can also provide visitors an appreciation of animals in a more natural context. And the result of lorises can also be applied to other solitary animals, for example, many kinds of lemurs. And I hope this kind of small accumulation of results can inspire more species-specific zoo design and make zoo a more animal-friendly place, not only for large animals, but also for small animals as well. So, finally, having a population of healthy animals in a zoo is not only important in the animal welfare point of view, but it's also important for the zoo conservation work, for example, the breeding and reintroduction program. And a population of healthy animals exhibiting natural behavior, plus species-specific design in a natural context, can also help a zoo to promote public education. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you for your attention.